I may be completely off my rocker on this one, and I'm trying to find the answer to one stupid question, simple question, but no one can give me this answer, and maybe you've got it because it could prove my theory totally wrong, or maybe I'm onto something here. The idea that building muscle is more about muscular endurance than just muscular strength, or primarily muscular strength. So if you want to build muscle, maybe endurance is a little bit more important. Here's where I'm talking about, right? We got a muscle. Muscles are made up of muscle fibers. Now, muscle fibers are incredibly simple. They've got two settings. They got off and they got on. Now, as far as I know, muscle fibers can't behave in different ways. The muscle fiber that you use is either off or on, and it produces the same amount of force when it turns on. Muscles themselves can perform different ways, but muscle fibers on an individual level can't perform differently. So if you are lifting and you need to produce more force in a muscle, it's because you use more muscle fibers at a time. So lifting 5 pounds, you're using each of these at a time. You use these, they get tired, then use these, they get tired, use these. But if you lift a heavier weight, you're using up a bigger chunk. Now the muscle itself is behaving in a different way. But on an individual level, as far as I know, that fiber, doesn't matter what you're doing, doesn't matter what the weight is or the resistance or what kind of demand you're placing on it, if it's on, it's doing the exact same thing and producing the exact same result under all circumstances, off or on. So the only difference that fiber can actually do is if it's off or on. If it's on, the only other difference is how long is it on for. Now, the ability to get stronger, and this is where I might be off my rocker, but as far as I know, the way you get stronger has nothing to do with the actual fibers themselves, but the recruitment of the fibers. Like I said, you get more strength by recruiting more fibers at a single time. Now, there's this idea out there that's very correlated between muscle size and muscle strength. And when people are talking to me about this, they're like, yeah, cross-sectional difference in a muscle with bigger diameter, cross-sectional diameter, it's stronger. Very well documented. But are we looking at this backwards? Here's why I'm thinking this. Right now, the idea is when we build a muscle, what we're doing is we're enlarging the muscle fibers themselves. There's very few examples of people saying, yes, you can add fibers to a muscle. But for the most part, when we build up a muscle, we're taking existing fibers and we're making them bigger and thicker. As Paul Wade talks about, and more I hear about this idea too, the reason why it's getting bigger is because it needs to be under tension for a longer period of time. It's like you have energy substrates in the cell and you turn it on, because again, that fiber is doing exactly the same thing under all circumstances. The only thing that's different is how long is it being turned on for, aka endurance. So it's like the energy level gets drained, and then if it gets too low, when it recovers, it's like, oh, we don't want to do that again. We pack more into the cell so it can be under tension for a longer period of time, aka endurance. Now here's the big question that I can't seem to answer. The fiber is bigger, wonderful, great. Is it stronger? Can it produce more force? No one can seem to answer this question for me. Because if it doesn't produce any more force, if this fiber is capable of the same amount of force in either side, and the only difference is the fact that it can be turned on for a longer period of time, this means that growing a muscle is an endurance activity, not a strength activity. It's about getting the fibers to turn on for a longer period of time. Now, it doesn't mean strength isn't still important. Strength is still very important to this, because like I said, when we're producing more force, we're using more fibers. What do you think is going to be able to build your muscles up bigger? If you're exhausting your fibers in small little chunks at a time, or if you can exhaust them in big chunks at a time? What do you think is going to be easier to fatigue those muscles? The big chunks, naturally. So in the end of this whole thing, nothing really changes. The strategy's still the same. You take a certain level of muscular tension, you build up the amount of time under that tension, and then you increase the resistance, aka increase the tension. When you do that, you're now turning more fibers on at a time so you can fatigue more fibers. potentially, and then you fatigue, and then you increase the number you use, and then you fatigue, and so on and so on and so on. So really, nothing really changes. You still want to do it in this pattern. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if we think to ourselves, I just need to get stronger, but we don't really embrace this endurance aspect of it, what we could do is we could become very good at just recruiting big chunks of muscle fiber at a time, which is possible. There are certainly a lot of guys out there who are strong as hell, but they're not really all that big because they're really good at recruiting a lot of motor units at a time in a very good coordinated way, so they can produce a ton of force, but they're not embracing the endurance aspect of their training, so they're not bringing about a lot of time under tension, a lot of time. They're not really fatiguing the energy within the cells, therefore the fibers don't get very big, the muscle as a whole doesn't get very big, it's even very strong. So this might be why I'm saying, if you want to really build muscle, make endurance a very big part of your training. Push that muscular fatigue as much as you can. Strength is still important. You still want to get stronger. And in some cases, you may need to get stronger because if you're plateauing, you may need strength first, which will lead to more size, but you're not going to get bigger just because you're stronger. You need strength and endurance. So you may need to emphasize that endurance aspect. Maybe I'm crazy, I don't know. But do the fibers actually get stronger when they're bigger? I know muscle does, but I'm not talking about muscle. I'm talking about the individual fibers. If you know this, please let me know so I can get some sleep at night. Let me know your thoughts below. Be fit, live free.